So what we want to talk about today is how to register to vote if you are not yet registered to vote, how to check on your polling place. When I voted in the primaries recently, my polling place had actually changed, and I didn't know that. So I showed up, me and Les showed up at the wrong polling site. We had to go to a different one. So it's worth checking that every time just to make sure you're not making a trip to the wrong site. We don't want to make voting any more difficult. We want to make it really easy. And then the last thing I'm going to show you is how to do a little bit of research on the candidates and issues that will be on your specific ballot. I know it's, for me at least, it's really good for me to know like everything that's going to be on the ballot before I get in there. I don't want to vote for somebody just, without any information. So I'll give you some resources to do a little research before you vote. All right. The first website that I want to show you is, this is going to be sort of your go-to site for voting information. So you can just type in vote.nyc. So I'm showing this to you on my computer just because I think it's easier to see than if I was doing it on my phone. But if you're on your phone, you just open up your internet browser and do vote.nyc. So this is where you can get all sorts of information about upcoming elections. This is just the Board of Elections of New York City. I'm going to show you a couple places that I think may be helpful for you, but there's additional information in here if you want to browse this site as well. All right. So what we're going to do is go to this tab that says vote. That's what we're interested in doing. So if you're not registered to vote yet, the deadline to register to vote is October 14th. And there's a couple of different ways to do that. All right. This is the deadline so that you can vote in the election on November 8th. And this is the midterm election. So we're going to be voting for who's in control of the Senate and the House of Representatives, among other things. It's such an important election. I really, really encourage you to do your research and vote. We really need everybody to vote in this election. There's a lot going on. And I know that, a lot of us have, I have a lot of anxiety about the future, and I feel like voting is a way that we can really affect what the future looks like. So please, please do vote. So if you're not registered to vote yet, there's a couple of different ways to do it. Okay, you can do it by mail. Okay, I would encourage you, I'll come back to by mail. Okay, I would encourage you, if you have a valid ID from the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles, so this is a DMV ID, so either a driver's license or a non-driver's ID from the DMV. It's not city ID. This has to be one of the ones that you get from the DMV. But if you have one of them and you're not registered to vote, you can completely register to vote online through the DMV. So I think that's probably your best and quickest option if you do have one of those DMV IDs. Okay. So if you click here and say register online, again, remember to do this before October 14th. You're going to click here and fill out this form from the DMV. And they're going to ask you for your ID number from your driver's license or permit or non-driver ID. And that's how they identify who you are. Okay. So you'll just go through this form, click I agree, and they'll send you confirmation of being registered. Okay. And you can choose to register with a political party. If you are registered with a political party, so if you're like a registered Democrat, you can vote in the primaries. This is not a primary right now. This is a general election for the midterms. Okay. So the most straightforward way, if you have an ID that has been issued by the DMV, is to register online. Okay. And then if you can't do that, so if you don't have a state ID or you're not comfortable registering online, you can always download a registration form. So you would click here, we'll just click on the English one. And what it'll give you is this 2-page form. I think it's 2 pages. Yeah, that has, no postage necessary. You just sort of wrap it up and mail it. So this is another option if you don't have a state ID or if you don't want to register online. And again, they have these applications in Spanish, Chinese, Korean, Bengali. If you think that you are already registered, it is worth clicking on this link to say check online to see if you're registered. Okay. Things happen. There's actually been weird political campaigns, not so much in New York, but in other states of purging people from voting rolls. So it's really important just to know that you're registered. You don't want to show up, even if you voted a million times, just check it out, right? But what you would do is just enter your last first, your birth date, your borough, and your zip code. And what it'll tell you is, yes, you're registered. Yes, your name is on the voter rolls. So that's what you want to see just to confirm that, okay? So you can get an absentee ballot if you are, in any way homebound, if you're going to be out of town. And two, let me just show you this. So you go to vote and you're going to go over here where it says absentee voting. So click on that. One of the things I want you to notice here is that if you're affected by COVID-19, if you have a high potential of contracting COVID-19, if you're high risk in any way of contracting COVID-19, that is enough sort of justification for you to get an absentee ballot. So if you're not comfortable going out in public right now because of your risk for contracting COVID, that can be your reason for getting an absentee ballot. So please don't let that stop you from voting. Go ahead and get that absentee ballot, all right? So you can do that online as well. You can also download the application, okay? And you just tell them, like it says on here, if you are susceptible to COVID-19 and that's the reason you want the absentee ballot, you just say temporary illness on there, okay? And that's a completely legitimate category for them right now. Another thing to keep in mind too is that they are still requiring you to wear masks and keep 6 feet social distance at polling places. So those protective measures are still in place. So please do, I imagine at most polling places, they will have masks for you if you don't come with one, but please bring one. And just know that that's something that's going to be an expectation when you show up at a polling site, okay? So the next thing that I would like to show you is how to find your polling place. So like I said, this can change. And so it's important that you double check where your polling place is. It's going to be understanding the ballot. It's find your poll site. There's a couple different ways to get to that. So always check on this before an election just to make sure you're going to the right place. And another thing to keep in mind is that New York has early voting. Your early voting site is different than your election day site. So that's something to keep in mind too. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use not my own address, but the address of the Health Action Center. All right. So it's 158 East 115th Street. You just put your zip code in and we're going to look up where our polling place is. Okay, so you want to make sure that it says the general election on November 8th. That's actually the only thing to choose from right now. Okay. The early voting site is going to be Johnson Houses. So it gives me the address and then it shows me all the days that are available for early voting. Okay. So early voting is going to start on October 29th. And what that means is you can go to this polling place, the one that's your early voting polling place, during any of these hours and go ahead and cast your vote before election day. It's really great. Generally, they're not super crowded, especially if you have any sort of anxiety about COVID. It might be better for you to go on a day where there's less people there. I really like it. And you can do it at your own convenience, which is nice too. So these are all the options for early voting days. And it gives you the option to add it to your calendar so you can put it on there to remind yourself. But that's a really good option if you want a little bit more flexibility about when you want to vote. And then on the day of the election, again, this is an important thing to note, my polling place is different, okay? So my polling place is actually a little bit closer, or it's just a different location, right? So on that day, I would be running PS 57, which is right over by the building. And so that would be, and again, I want to look at the hours here. So that's what you want to double check that just to make sure you're going to the right place, whether you're early voting or whether you're voting the day of, okay? So the next thing I want to show you, there's two options here. I just think I'm going to show you a different website for this because I think that the resources are a little bit better. You see there's a thing right here where you can click to view a sample ballot. That will show you what is going to be on your ballot, right? The one, I'll show you this from here, but the one on the Board of Elections, it shows you what everything is, but it doesn't actually give you much more information about anybody, right? I mean, you can click on these things, but you can't really learn much from them. So it's helpful to see what it looks like if you know who all these people are and who you want to vote for. But if you want to do some additional research, I want to give you a different website that I think is really helpful and really kind of has a whole bunch of information in one place if you are not sure who you want to vote for yet. And there's a lot of different things to vote for. So even if you know some of the main candidates you might want to vote for, there might be things on there that you haven't done much research on. There certainly are that I don't know that much about. There's ballot initiatives too. So it's not even you're voting for a candidate, you're voting for a policy. So those can get confusing too. So let me give you this as another resource. And this is a website called Ballotpedia, like encyclopedia, but Ballotpedia. All right. And so this has what I think is a better tool for looking up your sample ballot. And it's going to be very specific to your address, right? Because you might be voting for state offices or district offices, but it could, for very local elected positions, it's going to be based really specifically on your location. So you want to make sure that you put in your street address. Again, I'm going to be using the building for this. Okay, so you can put your email in. That puts you on Ballotpedia's email list. If you want to do that, that's fine. I don't want to right now, but I'm going to say view my ballot. Okay, it's going to ask me what election I'm looking at. Again, there's only one option right now. This is the big election coming up. All right, so we're going to click on that. All right, this will show us everything that's going to be on our ballot. And I'm just going to scroll through it real slowly first. So there's ballot measures, and what these are, if you voted before, you've probably seen these. These are ones where it's like, okay, this is a policy. Are you voting pro this policy or anti this policy? Let me just click on one of these. And these are always ones that I have to do research. I never know what's going to be on there in terms of ballot measures. And I don't want to get in there and not understand, what it means to vote for or against something, right? Because they can be worded kind of confusingly. And sometimes it's just like, I don't know what a yes vote means here. So let's say, let's look at this third one that says the Racial Equity Office Commission and Plans Amendment. So this is going to be on our ballot. Okay. And what this is going to tell us is if we vote yes, that we're going to support an amendment to create an Office of Racial Equity. Okay. And if we vote no, we're going to say we don't want to create an Office of Racial Equity. And you can go down here and see the whole text of what this ballot question is. And then some of these also have, this one doesn't have one, but some of them have actual like arguments on them. They're like, okay, the people who say vote yes, say it for these reasons. And the people who say vote no, say it for these reasons. So you can read through that and see where you fall on it. So you're not just going in there and, trying to understand the question while you're sitting there and like not being really sure of what you're voting for or against. Okay. Let me go back to this again. Let me see if I can find one that has the sort of discussion part of it on there. Okay, this one is saying a yes vote support 4.2 billion in general obligation bonds for projects related to the environment, natural resources, water infrastructure. And so here's some overview of it at the bottom. There's some background about it. There's even like a table that shows you how this money would be used, and some sort of definitions. And if we keep scrolling, yeah, you can see who supports this and what the arguments of different people are. Okay, so you can really read through this and get a really good sense of what the discussion is around this and where you stand on it. I need to be looking at this before I vote because I didn't know some of these things, right? I didn't know any of the ballot measures that were on here this time. Okay, so those are going to be at the top of your sample ballot. They may not be at the top of your actual ballot. I think they're usually at the end, but the way this shows up on Ballotpedia is they're going to be at the top here so you can look at them. Okay, so then they're going to break it down by Congress. So Espaillat, who's running unopposed here. Let me just show you what you see if you click on a candidate here. So if it says incumbent, that's the person who currently holds that office. So they're running to keep that office. Okay. So let's just click on him real quick, just so you can see what kind of information you can get on each of the candidates. Okay. So if you go in a candidate's page, it will have like a little bio that sort of almost looks like a Wikipedia bio here. And it will talk about this person's career, what they've done in the past, what committees they've served on, if they're an incumbent. So if they have been in the House before or the Senate before, where they've served, what they've worked on, some key votes. That's probably what I would scroll straight down to, like, what have they voted for? So these are things that they voted for: the American Rescue Plan, the Equality Act, some sponsored legislation. So it just gives you a sense of where they stand on some of these issues. And depending on what issues are most important to you, you can really like sort of focus in on those and say, okay, this is the candidate I want to vote for. Okay. All right, so let me go back to the sample ballot. You can do that for each of these candidates. So I'm gonna have, when I go to vote, I'm gonna vote for my representative, for my senators, or just one senator. So statewide office. So if you're voting in New York State, these are gonna be on your ballot no matter what. The governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, the controller. And then because I'm in state Senate District 30, I'm going to be voting in that race. And I'm New York State Assembly. So these are you know, the state equivalents of the House and the Senate. All right. So I'm going to be voting in these as well. I'll be voting for a civil court judge. There's only one person running. Another circuit court. And then you'll get one of these that is like judicial districts. And those are almost always that you vote for multiple ones. So this says, you know, there are 3 seats up for election and there are 3 people running. So you can vote for one or all 3. Okay. So this is a really good way. And then one thing I want to point out to you is these super local elections, they don't have quite as much, they don't have nearly as much information as some of the bigger or the more national or even state offices have. If it's a super local election, they may have a little less information. But there's still, you can still go in there and look around and see if there's things that indicate to you that this is someone you want to vote for or not, right? Okay, so again, that's Ballotpedia. And to remind you of important dates, you need to register to vote by the 14th. You need to request your absentee ballot by the 24th. If you get an absentee ballot, you can either return it in person to a polling site by the day before the election, so the 7th, or you can postmark it on the 8th at the latest, right? So please do keep those dates in mind. Remember, this is the biggest one. The actual election day is the 8th, all right? And early voting will start on October 29th.